Dáithí Ó Murchú, International Consultant and Expert Advisor in Education, Disruption and Emerging Technologies, Honorary Consul for the Ivory Coast to Ireland. Thank you for accepting my invitation to come on my series entitled Asking the Hard Questions, What Legacy Are We Leaving Our Young? And you may wonder why I've come up with this series. Well, the silence I thought was deafening. People have forgotten the art of asking questions. And unless we ask questions and ask the right questions, we will not arrive at an answer or arrive at a proper solution to the conundrum that is life as we see it at the minute. Now, specifically, I'm looking at this area today in failing to adequately prepare our future for our future in a globalized world. Have we Irish left our young with insurmountable challenges for the future on every level? Is there too much ground to be made up to avoid a dystopian future for millennials and Generation Z, for example? And we'll bear that in mind as we go. So I find your career and your life journey today is fascinating. It's colourful. It bespeaks a man who's single-minded, who's highly driven and ambitious, but you've got a beautiful balance in terms of being compassionate and being empathetic and knowing how to voice it. So what are the key experiences in your life to date that has led to the Dáithí we have now in front of us?
Dús trí sa gurb míle mág le tasan chure a bheith an seo libh. Pour tout le monde là qui parle français, c'est un privilège comme un consul honoraire pour la Côte d'Ivoire. It's a huge privilege to be here with you. Wow. You've asked a lot of questions there, and I hope this is going to be an interesting conversation because I'm sure we're going to disagree on a lot. Being a retired principal teacher since 2014 and having spent a lifetime in what I would like to think in service and in honor and in privilege, there is a saying that says the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Well, I would have to say probably the greatest influence in my life has to have been my mother, because Mom was in the Second World War, Dad was in the Second World War, and their lives was a difficult one. He was badly injured, disabled, and I grew up therefore in what is now referred to as the hood.
Right.
And when you grow up in the hood, you learn how to be the hood. And you become the hood, and very quickly you learn things like, for example, being or trying to act intelligent is equating the same thing as being dead. So you learn very quickly to adapt to your environment. But when you have a very strong mother, a mother who believes, and you come from a very strong family of, and I've lost a lot of the members of my family, and these have been major lessons along. So the lessons you learn from your family, the lessons you learn as a young person,
into your soul,
what you see at a very deep microcellular level from a very young age. It's like, for example, teaching a child. Some people say my child is a genius. They're 2 years of age and they can write and they can read. My answer is I'm sure they are, but at 2 years of age, the bones of their hands are not yet formed and they should be playing with dough and sand and enjoying themselves. So what formed me more than anything else would be the experiences that I have been privileged to learn throughout life, which means that I'm still learning every single moment of every day. But to go back to the beginning, the hand that rocked that cradle way back then was the hand that I'm very honored and privileged to acknowledge here again once with my mom and my dad and my family that have gone before us right now.
Yeah. And so that was the resilience building. I often argue that resilience is caught, it's not taught. So that's the resilience you caught in your upbringing. Yeah. But the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world.
Absolutely.
What hand is presently rocking the cradle in modern world?
In the modern world, I wonder, because it's no longer just, let's be careful here. The hand that's rocking the modern world of the 21st century right now is a virtual hand.
Yes.
It's a non-virtual hand. It's a real hand. Actually, is there any hand? I mean, I would have to say right now, back in the 50s and 60s in Ireland, a hand was a hand. And indeed, to have a virus means you were sick. And to be in a web means you were a spider. And we won't even go there. So I would have to say, Teresa, if you're talking about a hand now, I'm going, whoa, with Industry 4 and Industry 5, one would have to define the word hand through a million different encyclopedia. What hand is rocking the world right now? I wonder right now, is the tail wagging the dog? Is the dog wagging the tail? Actually, does the dog and the tail exist? And what is it that's happening? So we've got a problem here.
So it's a big one to be a parent nowadays at that rate of going.
Oh, to be a parent nowadays must be an absolutely incredible, privileged nightmare. And I use those two words because to be a parent is the most incredible challenge that you have. But nowadays, with everything that is visible and invisible, Irish would say so eke and do eke. Everything which is visible and invisible is real because everything is accessible and pervasively accessible 24/7 right now. There's no such thing as, well, shops close at 6 o'clock on a Sunday and you have to do this. Everything is now ready for everyone 24/7. You can be connected globally and universally, planetarily right now. You can look at cameras on Mars right now,
so
24/7.
Really, that says to me, to be a parent and to be an effective parent nowadays, you need to be wide awake and you need to constantly update yourself, educate yourself on what's out there and what you should be doing to, in actual fact, get your child ready for the world he's entering or she is entering. Am I right?
Wow, to be a parent today, it's all I can say is this: to be a parent today, you need to know how to be empathic, loving, caring, and most importantly, connected with your child. Connected, because if you're connected, then they will understand what true, beautiful, soulful, meaningful connection is. Because if the only book I learned to read when I am a child is a book about, and it's the only book that makes me literate, is about violence and murder and killing and all of these things, then to me, literacy that's the norm. So a parent nowadays is there. So maybe I can put it this way. A parent today either needs to be mindful or mindful. But if your mind is full, then it's very hard to be mindful.
So it's all about being present and being the molder of that child that you've been honored with in your life.
And as a principal teacher, it's been a huge privilege to try and to lead and to work with teams to do this. But it's the greatest challenge you will have, because the world of connectivity right now wants you to be hopping from everywhere to everything and going all the time. They now say that the capacity of attention of a young child is just seconds. When someone accesses a website, if it doesn't catch their attention in the next first 3 seconds, they go off it, because we're used to fast society, fast food, fast everything. But as we know, we are what we eat, and therefore if we don't eat properly, our body is a machine, a beautiful machine that was shut down. Therefore, if we're accessing everything and it's not the right access, then I rest my case, Your Honour.
What food is to the body, information is to the brain.
And to the soul, by any other name.
Yeah.
And to the microcellular vibration that's within each one of us, in the connection within a much greater universe. We choose, we decide. We cannot just blame society and governments and everyone out there, because at the end of the day, we put our heads on our pillows at night and we decide. But as parents, we have the responsibility, even in our own crazy lives, to try and create and construct that environment which at least has what I call a 21st century empathic, meaningful connection, literacy with the children, with society. And let's not blame everyone else.
It's about taking responsibility for yourself, for your own direction, for your family, for those you bring into the world.
I hope so. And I think that people are incredible. They have that capacity to be beautifully incredible. But we also, as we know from history, have the capacity of free will. And sorrowfully, sometimes we make massively wrong decisions. And we somehow try to cover it in it being a right decision for all the right reasons. But the decision was ours. And don't be blaming anyone else.
We've got all sorts of evidence from the world of psychology, Stanford trials, all sorts of evidence as to our capacity for evil also, or for harming our fellow man. Yeah. So I will just digress for a minute. Dáithí, the extreme athlete, the educator, the leader, the change agent, how have your interests and passions coalesced and blended in shaping the you of today?
Wow. When you're in an extreme environment, if it's minus 40, minus 50 degrees Celsius, and if, for example, the wind is blowing at 100, 120 kilometers an hour, or if you're on the Sahara, or if you're anywhere else, every decision you make is life and death.
Right.
It is. All the decisions, whether you're doing a Guinness World Record, which I had the privilege of doing the highest extreme altitude for an ultramarathon on Earth, a decision you make is life and death. And the same thing with a lot of things in life. The decisions may not be life and death, but if you look at every decision you make as having a consequence, I call it a vibration. If every decision you make has a vibration and it affects something out there, then in many ways, as a principal teacher, if you make a decision, you try to make a decision with empathy. And the old saying again, I'll go back to man, a good carpenter measures twice and cuts once. Sometimes you've got to think, seek other people. The most powerful word in any language is help. Seek the help of others to gain their knowledge, to gain their wisdom, and then to make decisions. So where I am right now, I would hope to think is a collection of a lot of lessons learned in life. And people call lessons failures or mistakes. I like to think of them as lessons. Failure is only a failure if you fail to learn from it. If you fail the lesson, if you've learned, then it is success. So the lessons you learn throughout life, and man, I have learned many lessons throughout life, and I've created a lot of those lessons myself.
Sure.
I would hope to think that I am today a product of all of the sum of those lessons and parts, and of the people I meet and the people with whom I have the privilege and honor of connecting to bring me where I am today. But the lessons you learn hopefully bring you to a stage where you can make decisions that are bigger than just you, because if you have that privilege to be in service, then you are there to be there for everyone. But also, just like you do when you get on an airplane, ladies and gentlemen and friends out there, ladies and gentlemen, should we reach any problem when the mask falls down? You know this one I'm going to summarize. Put on your own mask first before you start taking of everyone else, because you're no good to anyone unless. So again, if you try to know yourself, if you try to get to know yourself, you know what you can and can't do. And there's times where you have to say to people, sorry, no, I'm not going to do that, because that's not right for me. Or yes, I would love to do that, but a lot of people can't say no. And they very often say yes too much, and they don't put on their own masks to take care of themselves.
Life has become so busy. Would you agree that people have failed to give the time to getting to know themselves?
I think people want to get to know themselves. People want to get to know others. But life as we know it right now, again, Star Trek, it's life, Jim, but not as we know it. Life has changed in such a fast pace. In French, years ago, we used to call it le pas de vie, the pace of life. The pace of life right now with accessibility is, there's the old song of, you know, I want to grade up in a city that never sleeps. Well, the world never sleeps now. You're in a world that never sleeps. And unless you take the time to slow down, then you're going to end up in a situation where you will not know who you are. And if you don't know who you are, how can you know the decisions you're making unless you connect with that? So again, I'm not blaming the world. I'm bringing it back to the fact, and people may disagree with me, and I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
Don't blame the messenger. You are the person that makes the decision about you. Now, I know you may say society and governments, okay, but about you, what you do, how you are, what you think, how you connect, that is you.
It's probably the greatest challenge to hold on to that, to remain grounded and hold on and to thine own self be true.
Right now is the greatest challenge that's there, because everything is trying to pull you away from that right now.
Sure. Now, take me on that journey that brought you to becoming the Honorary Consul for the Ivory Coast to Ireland. And it's got to be a very different experience, but it gives you yet another framework of reference, and a comparative analysis, I'm sure, is going on the whole time with you in your head.
I spoke to a colleague this morning from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I said to him, this is a position I never wanted. it was one that I never thought would even be possible. And again, my mother, I said, if my mother was alive now, she'd look at me and she'd go, are you serious? Representing a country of what? I mean, West Africa is 400 million people,
Yeah.
and you're in La Côte d'Ivoire, and you represent a country in West Africa to Ireland, which is a huge privilege. And I wish to thank the Irish government for sending the executor documents, and indeed the Vienna Convention 63-67, which clearly lays out the responsibilities and duties of an honorary consul. But La Côte d'Ivoire is a most incredible country, which, by the way, I often slag them saying you took the Irish flag and turned it gold, white and green. And we know that green, white and gold, gold, white and green, and many of the people from the Ivory Coast would come from a country that for a long time was in difficulty and would have been basically impoverished. And the only way out was, as we saw, through sport, through things. To be appointed as the Honorary Consul by the government of La Côte d'Ivoire is a huge privilege and an honor. I went there in 2016 with an economic group from Ireland to basically feel, because I had been principal in a school in Dublin where we had many, many nationalities. And I realized the first generation of Saharan, Sub-Saharan, West African, East African, Central African families were coming from a different mindset and mentality where they didn't even speak the language, and they didn't know how to become Irish. They didn't know how to separate themselves, as the Irish did many, many, many years ago in so many other countries. And from that, believe it or not, the connection began. We started to talk about life. I started to learn some languages, work with the children, create a secondary school at that time with others to provide, enable and empower children to be able to connect with who they are, where they are, but to be truly international Irish people living here, to be part of the cultural, psychological, social, educational, personal, inter and interpersonal Irish connectivity, also respecting from whom they came. When I went down to the Ivory Coast, it was a privilege to meet and to try and create a bilateral, at that time I was innocent, just bring us there to create a way of bilaterally connecting. And when I was there, the government spoke, and I had many, many days of many discussions with many people. And from that, the rest is history. They basically said, would you like to represent us in Ireland? And it's taken quite a while because it is a very detailed diplomatic process of getting the executor. And I want to thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs and the Irish government for accepting an Irish person to be the Honorary Consul for la Côte d'Ivoire ici en Irlande. C'est un privilège, c'est un honneur, and it is incredible. And indeed, this weekend I had a privilege of presenting the cabinet, my cabinet, and the plans, short-term, medium-term, long-term plan to the Ivorian community in the north and south of Ireland, and indeed those who are connected from all over the world, as our vision for the very short-term, medium-term, and long-term, pre-COVID, in COVID, post-COVID, and how we can build this connectivity on so many, many levels between West Africa and Ireland, La Côte d'Ivoire and Ireland, and it is a massive challenge. Beautiful.
You say your passion is to share the message of one world, one shared vision for all mankind in an inclusive manner. And you talk about equality and equity.
Yes.
Is all of this realizable? And speak to me a little about that.
It's a beautiful thing. Barker, 1988, New York, made a wonderful statement. Action without vision, man, is kind of a dream, you know, or a waste of time. Vision without action is a dream. Action with vision can change the world. Action and vision on their own are a waste of time. And too many people talk too much action, too much vision together. But what people, I would love them to think is this: equality is not equity.
Right.
Equality and equity are two different things. Equality is high fence, give everyone the same box, they all stand in it. But that doesn't mean they can all look over the fence. Equity is giving them all a box, but giving them different size boxes so that they're all on the same level to be able to look at things. Do I believe this realizable? Yes, I do, because Ireland of 21st century, 2021, is a country that is now a country that has evolved and changed so much in well over 60 years that I've been on this earth. And now we have reached a point of evolution. We have evolved, we have become. Some might say we've devolved, and this is the big argument. I believe myself that the world is now one major global village. Is it attainable to ensure we have equality and equity? If everyone agrees that we need to do it, but you will always have the haves and the have-nots and those that have a different agenda. And Africa, I put up something on Twitter recently, which was a map of Africa in 1884 as it was divided up among 13 European nations and an emerging United States. And they put all the countries, Google it, Africa, yes. 1884, and see every country in Africa was owned by a European country or by an emerging United States. And this was the case all over the world. So is it attainable? Yes. What will make it attainable? The reality are, and now I'm not going to get any religious on this, but remember, man, you were made from dust, and back to dust you're going to go the day you die. Or as my mother used to say again, Dáithí, there are no pockets in a shroud.
Of course. But has mankind in general terms, has mankind matured enough, or is it big enough to embrace this vision, this acceptance of fellow man, regardless of colour, creed, state in life?
Oh, I am no expert in that area, but I'm going to talk as Dáithí right now. I believe that we have the capacity to do anything we want to do if we want to do it, because deep down we are all incredibly beautiful human beings. But the choice, sometimes we make the wrong choices for what we believe to be, or we put out to be the right reasons, and then we fool ourselves. But deep down, the capacity to achieve this, absolutely.
Sure. Now, let's take this another twist on this. Will technology, the advances in technology, and I mean, it's advancing at such a rate these days, will it merely serve to accelerate and accentuate the great divide that is between the haves and the have-nots?
You can look at it both ways. The simple answer on that is yes, absolutely. Because once you have a digital divide, and because technology is about information, and because information is king, I won't even call it knowledge. There's a big difference between information and knowledge. And any of you in Ireland have ever done your Leaving Cert know that as long as you can vomit the information, you'll get your points to go to college. But that doesn't mean that it's knowledge. Knowledge is what life teaches you. So I believe that you could easily, Teresa, you could easily argue that the pervasive speed heading towards Moore's law of that idea, when do we reach the pitch of that summit of the idea of technology acceleration, can that actually be a divider? It can be the most incredible divider that's there, because it is unseen, because it is ubiquitous. The ubiquity of the technology, the hidden stuff, the AI, the algorithms, what's gathering the information on you. But at the same time, it presents us with an opportunity. Let me give you an example. If I had 25 million children in Africa right now needing a malaria pill, and I bring Irish doctors or Doctors Sans Frontières down there, they can work for only so many hours a day because they're wrecked. But if I create robots that know how to, through the programming, give out these, I can have doctors, inverted commas, I'm going to be controversial here, I can have robot doctors who 24 hours a day can administer everything that is necessary to ensure that those 25 million don't work. 200,000 hours is spent every day in Africa with young girls and women carrying water. 200,000 hours. Imagine that I had robots down there that could do that. These girls and young women could then go into education. Imagine if we could have the algorithms and the technology to see where droughts and famines have happened, crunch the numbers, look at the possibility, probability, and then allow people to plant in the right places so that we stop hunger around the world. Look at how the technology can be used to plant all of these trees in inaccessible areas through drones. So I can argue both sides of this, but once again, Teresa, it's down to human agenda and I'm using the word, and
Yeah.
human choice and equality and equity.
Sure, of course it is. So and it's down to taking responsibility and choice, as you say. What does it mean for you to be an international disruptor? What that word disruptor I like. What does it mean for you?
Someone asked me once to define it, and I said there are a million definitions, but for me, I said, may I take it as if I was a keynote at a conference?
Yes.
If there was an international conference, most keynotes, and please forgive me all you keynotes out there, most keynote speakers will take the topic of the conference and will tell people what they want to hear. They will take all the information and then they will add in their own snippets or little pieces of gold, but they will normally tell people what they want to hear to stay in the vision and the essence of the conference.
Sure.
To me, as a keynote speaker, as an international disruptor, I believe my job is to incite, I-N-C-I-T-E, incite revolution in the room, virtual or otherwise, so that people stand up and go, that is rubbish, impossible, because you need to disrupt people's feeling of harmony with accepting everything, so they think outside, so they're willing to question their own mindset, so they're willing to say, is this right? Do I believe? And if I don't believe, why do I not believe? In other words, a disruptor's job is to ensure, in my humble opinion and in my personal opinion, to ensure that, again, the good carpenter measures twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times before you cut. Because if you cut, it's cut. And once it's cut, going back again. So the job is to be insightful, S-I-G-H-T-F-U-L, by inciting debate, questioning, and a sense of opening of a conversation that will allow people to exchange on an equal and equitable level their opinions so that someone can form. Now, that doesn't mean that someone will change their mind, but if people come out of a keynote talk that I give and say, "Asher, that was grand, it was wonderful, I loved it," I actually feel I failed. I actually would feel I failed.
Sure.
I would love to see there was someone down the hall going, he should have his head cut off for doing that. That's rubbish. Because if it's rubbish, you have to know why. I'd say to someone, why is it rubbish? Why do you think it's rubbish? Tell me why. Come on, argue. And I have to be willing, Teresa, to listen.
It's, I suppose, everything is in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? And where you're at and how you interpret challenge. But this brings me to the question, is our education system, as we have it, fit for purpose going forward? Do we really need to go back to the drawing board and make fast moves to adapting?
Okay. Wow, so sorry. Because that question is, it's like someone saying to me, is artificial intelligence a good thing? And what they don't realize is behind every single algorithm, there's a human agenda.
Sure.
Education has a human agenda. And in many countries, that human agenda is education is all about reading, writing, arithmetic. Let's be clear, curricula are put together so that students can learn and learn to regurgitate and learn to do examinations and assessments so that eventually they will come to a high point in their career when they will then, if they wish, go on to third level, because there's a system of door opening and enablement and empowerment there through certain marks that go on into life and into university. And then you look at research which was done in Oxford and the United States a few years back, when top 1% of students were brought into an interview because they were the top 1% academically, and they were asked questions about empathy and love, connection, and they all failed, and because they weren't prepared. So is education fit for purpose? I am sure that every government that I would speak to would say that the education system they have and the curricula that they have are fit for purpose for their country. But is education, the Greek word, the Latin word educo, to lead? I would have to question, what are the necessary lessons that should be taught in the 21st century? And one thing is certain, we used to say adapt, change, and overcome. I would say that's rubbish. Adapt, change, learn, unlearn, relearn, and transform, because you will never overcome simply because if you overcome something, that means you've reached the ultimate point. Education is a process, and education was always meant to lead the human being. Plato and others said to become active citizens. And you had the idea of saying we're prosumers, a consumer who eats and then proactively gives back. So is there any system, do I believe there's any system of education in the world right now that actually treats the human being as a human being in themselves totally and is accepted by all governments and society as being the right one? No.
So really that notion of holistic education that we all trot out, really we don't meet it. Let's say at the moment, employers would say that youngsters coming into the workplace have none of the soft skills. So really, do we need to start teaching emotional intelligence from the get-go?
Now we're on to IQ and EQ. I love that one.
Yes.
To me, EQ and a person's EQ is of equal, if not greater importance than their IQ.
Absolutely.
And I would not throw any baby out with the bathwater. I believe that many of the subjects that are there should give a wider choice to students, but should not be assessed in the way they're being assessed, as in a 3-hour exam after 13 years of school. And that applies nearly globally. When you've got 4-year-olds in certain countries globally who are doing 2 or 3 hours after school, how shall I put this, grinds. Yes, 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds. Wow. Certain countries are doing grinds after school, so they go ahead. My thinking would always be this: the combination of as many IQ and EQ experiences provide the human being with that which he, she, or they, or them already are, which is a complex collection of more than just IQ. So it's like someone said, I'm only going to go to a doctor because I only believe in doctors, and I won't welcome any complementary therapies. Sometimes there is no just one answer, but one thing I am certain of, that IQ and EQ at worst should be equal and equitable. I use the words again. And systems of education, one thing COVID has taught them: everything you thought was solid, lads, ain't no longer solid. If everyone wants to be a doctor, trust me, let them all into college, as happens in certain European countries, for the first year. They'll learn very, very quickly. Actually, I don't want to be a doctor, but then give them the option to go to something else that they want. And you know what? They'll find their passion. And when someone finds their passion, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? If you find your passion, you excel. And now you have 21st century where people are excelling and loving what they're doing. And then Plato's idea of being a proactive citizen of society, then it becomes a reality.
So you're a member of the scientific community for science education in Europe. In November 2020, you delivered innovative approaches to authentic real-world STEAM relearning environments. Give me a flavour of what that was about.
Again, Scientix is run by European School Networks, which is a wonderful organisation in Europe that looks for European countries to promote STEM, STEAM, and what we call streams, which also includes sustainability and 21st century literacies. Right. But the fact of the matter is that Dublin West Education Centre, a most incredible centre in Ireland that runs so many, many programmes, was chosen to be the national contact point for European School Network for Scientix. The whole aim is to promote STEM and STEAM in society, but STEM and STEAM to also include the creative essence of the human being, and streams to bring that into 21st century literacies, empathic literacy, EQ literacy, ethical literacy, fake news, real news, and sustainability, so that students in Ireland. And there was a huge issue over many, many years. There was always the argument in Ireland, sure, girls don't do this, boys do this. But the fact is that Scientix is there to present the capacity, for example, to schools to do the STEM European label and to assess where they are in their schools so that they can access programs to enable and empower their students to access other science, technology, engineering, mathematics, creative programs to enable them to be disruptors, to engage with the technologies of society today. And that's what the aim is in Dublin West, to be a national contact point for that. I have the privilege of being the national coordinator for that with Dublin West, and to try and encourage all Irish students in all schools to know that everyone is a scientist, a technologist, an engineer, and a mathematician. We just need to understand that STEM and STEAM and scientists is that opportunity to again enable Irish schools to connect on a much wider European platform, to empower their students to access more resources so that they can know that everyone is beyond. Because when STEM came out originally, Teresa, it was just for the left brain, logical thinking. That's how it came out. And then we introduced the A into STEAM, and they said, oh man, you're not bringing those arty people. I said, well, actually, creativity is something that the human being has that technology does not have.
Yeah.
Actually, we have the capacity to be problem solvers, empathically connected with creativity that no machine out there has yet. No machine has yet. Therefore, Industry 5 is about the human and the technology, humanology. Industry 4 was all about the machine. Industry 5 is now about that. So STEM and STEAM, and in Dublin West, we call it streams, which includes digital and green and 21st century literacies, is about opening that to everyone equally and giving them all the same opportunity.
You talk about Industry 5. That is opportune, considering the entry of AI into the market and the potential for AI to sideline the human in the human, if you know what I mean.
People very often think they know what AI is, and a lot of them do. But I often say to people, imagine that everything you use in your hand, every single thing you use to connect, any system you use to connect, that's called pervasive technology. So you are using anything to connect to the internet. So we'll say we got 5G. Everything that you connect to that's hidden, that you can't see, that's gathering all the information on you, that's building up a profile on you, a digital virtual profile. That's called ubiquity or ubiquitous. AI is the mother of all ubiquity, because AI is based on machine learning, and indeed we'll go deep learning. It is an algorithm of a combination of algorithms that gathers together what the human agenda that designed it asks it to gather. So therefore, AI has the capacity to make the most incredibly beautiful, wonderful, disruptive differences in society globally right now, to change everything and make it more equal and equitable, or it has the capacity to be your worst nightmare.
But it is up to the human.
It's up to how you connect and how you connect. Because I would say this, Teresa, if I said to you, go into a shop right now, go in without any of your clothes on and pick up the little microphone and say, hello, dear shoppers, this is Teresa Mary Han Campbell talking to you here. Now imagine that microphone was connected to a mast outside that's connected to the local radio, to the global radio, and out into the universe. Now imagine that you were saying what you thought was inside a little shop on your own is now being transmitted all over the world, and everything you're saying is being analyzed and being put together with everything you've ever done, by the text you've sent, by the Facebook posts you've made, by the Twitters, by the website you visited, and all of this putting together. Would you do that with any other human being you don't know and reveal, for example, your bank account details, your personal details, your address, your home, your inner thoughts? Would you do that with a stranger if you met them on the street that you never knew?
And that brings me to the point, we really need to teach our young from the get-go what is private, what must remain private, and what is public. So what are our plans in this regard for the future to protect our young, to protect us all?
Again, to most, we'll take it to most people in the world, this is just a phone. And all it does is make phone calls and send text. I mean, how many people out there right now listening have sent a note or sent an email or said something on the phone, and then 10 minutes later they get a little ad saying, oh my God, oh, that phone's listening to me. And people are going into Alexa or Googling and saying, and all of a sudden you get these ads coming in because the AI is building that profile. I call it AI literacy, Teresa. AI literacy is basically no longer just reading and writing. It's knowing what literacy is, teaching people what is literacy. Now, in Europe, the Digital Education, I suppose, Action Plan, DEAP, has been launched from 2021, 2027. And indeed, Action 8 on that plan is all about AI, the skills of AI developing. There are many European projects coming along on that will actually be on AI literacy through various things that we can use to make us more literate. And in Ireland, indeed, over Easter 2021, the Minister of Education launched a new digital strategy, which is a consultation process, which is to build upon the existing digital framework, DFA, digital learning, DLF, digital learning framework. But again, I come back to Dublin West. Dublin West Education Centre has been validating schools and digital schools of distinction for many years, helping them to understand this process. But for 2 years, they have waited for funding from the department in something that is vital, which is enabling and empowering schools to self-reflect on this literacy of 21st century technology. So Europe has the DEAP 21-27. It's the only game in town. Ireland at the same time, even though Europe has launched this, is now going into a consultation, but not on the DEAP, on the digital learning strategy, which I hope will include the DEAP and beyond, because we're now at the greatest time of what I have talked to you about, yin and yang. Education, literacy, technology right now does not have a soul and empathic connection, a reflective human capacity to be creative. Technology right now is yes, no, up, down, in, out, gather the information, I have this, I don't understand. And unless we get our act together, this will be either your best friend or your worst nightmare. And right now, because we don't understand this capacity, I believe it's falling into the area of being capable of becoming our worst nightmare because of what AI is doing.
In many ways, mankind is at a crossroads. In many ways, unless we wake up, we will no longer retain our mastery. We'll be driven by it as opposed to using it as a tool. Am I right?
Again, it's choice. Think about it, Teresa. You and I are of an age right now where someone say we're in the autumn or winter of our life. The children born today will become augmented human beings. As they grow up, they can have new livers, new eyes, new hearts, new kidneys. They can be augmented, supplemented. Actually, the difference between us, I'm going to be controversial here, and Neanderthal humankind will be the difference between the children born today and us in less than 50 years, because the augmented human being can be augmented. I know people go, so all of those big films that scared us about Universal Soldier, that's just film, that's to make money. But the fact is, an awful lot of, think back to Star Trek, the earlier ones of Captain Kirk. He used to hit the button and she used to, when you're the Lura, which was the first time, by the way, a black woman was ever brought into a power situation that was raised up, that showed inequality. We're not going to go into that yet, but when they used to hit this, that's not Bluetooth. And the fact is that people were able to say, beam me up, Scotty. Now you can actually take scans of the human body. So everything that was science fiction,
is now
reality. And we seem to think when we buy the new 3D printers, we got the best of the best. Companies are working on the 5th generation of these things. So we call that the AIoT, the artificial intelligence of things. So again, choice, education, to be literate in what's happening gives us the capacity to choose and to be literate. We are not sheep. The fact is that we need the technology to do what we do, to make the changes that we make.
Advancement, in inverted commas, but we need it to be true advancement.
We need it to be meaningful.
Absolutely.
Advancement, and everything that we are doing right now has that capacity. So I would never say unless it's absolutely obvious to me. I would never say that technology is a bad thing, because it is not. Technology brings people who are differently abled into a world where they are enabled by technology to do everything. Often people talk about Stephen Hawking, etc., and I get that, but there are people out there right now who have been in the past considered to be disabled, who are now differently abled, but are now enabled, where technology has changed their lives significantly, equally and equitably. So
Yes.
that's the beauty of what it does. But it also has the capacity to create the most awful situations. Because if everything in the world boiled down to AI making decisions, there'd be no love, and there'd be no second thinking, there'd be no bluffing.
Yeah, the differentiator is our EI, our ability to empathize, etc.
Our EQ and our IQ, and the understanding of what it is to be human.
Yeah.
And that beautiful song, I mean, I often think of it, and I know it's there, and hope you don't have to pay royalties on this one, Teresa. I'm only human after all. Don't put the blame on me. Well, actually, you know what? I am putting the blame on you if you allow the technology. So the hand that rocks the cradle ruled the world? No. The hand that rocked the cradle, you put it beautifully to start,
yes,
became part of the beautiful human being each one of us is today. And it helped us to rule the world, our world, where we are right now. But we need to connect as humans empathically with our IQ and EQ to see how we fit into this, and stop being the haves and the have-nots, the evil that can be created for reasons that are unacceptable in the world.
It all demands unity, and unity of vision, and unity of thought, and acceptance of each other. And while we toy around with that, we may lose valuable time, because the pace of this stuff and this advancement is huge. So does the premature and inappropriate use of technology among our young disrupt the wiring of the brain to the point that the learner is more distractible, less able to concentrate, retain and regurgitate information? Or through use of technology, are we simply honing more neural pathways that were never explored before, and that our young will adapt and will embrace the challenges ahead of them?
And if you were doing your doctorate, I'd say that that was an awful biased question to answer me right now. But I will answer it this way. It is only about the last 2 or 3 years the countries around the world have actually acknowledged that children being allowed to play all the virtually immersed games, that it is actually an addiction. So there are children at the age of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out there that are addicted to gamification because it has rewired the pathways of the brain. There are people out there who've lived so much in an immersed environment that they think it's actually reality. So therefore, this mission is called virtual reality. But to some people, virtual reality is reality. The synaptics of the brain. We are water, basically. Water conducts electricity. It has been proven how many times you go back in history where you can show, even down when you think of films about the Vietnam War and Korea, and you see how people their minds were manipulated by utilizing what was considered to be at that time technologies. But the simple answer is this. If you wish to use any tool whatsoever to create a false or a fake, even look at Jim Carrey when he was living in that fake film, fake environment, which is all there like he thought it was normal every day. You can create an environment which is fake, and you can do it in a way that looks real. So if, and using your words, so in the pointed question you asked me, I would have to say, with the wonderful negative terms you used, absolutely 100%. But I'm going to hit you with this one. If you turn those negative adjectives and verbs into positive, then technology has the capacity to turn the human being into a most beautiful environmental place and being where they can connect with, and let's be honest about it, reality.
Sure.
And as opposed to what you say, but yes, most technologies have been proven through research to be addictive. And anything which is addictive, I don't care what you say, anything which comes under the word addictive is not good for the human being. And therefore, I will therefore see to you as to your professorship on this one and say, your question has validity and reliability, as long as you accept that you can have another option of a question answer.
I really believe at this point for humanity, we really need to sit up and take stock, and people need to make sound choices and be responsible, particularly parents, because otherwise the horse is bolted. We've lost the game. Yeah,
but who owns the farm? Who put the horse on the farm? Who owns the lock to the gate?
That's
and
right.
in Irish constitution, it's very simple. Article 42, 244, 440, look at those. All those articles are about the primary educators of the children are the parents. So don't be blaming schools, don't be blaming the government, don't be blaming the curricula. At the end of the day, Teresa, who turns off the Wi-Fi at home when it's time to go to bed? Who lets the Wi-Fi on at 2 or 3 in the morning if they are engaging with textology, if they're engaging with other words like that? Who is it that allows that to stay on? And parents might say to you, excuse me, Dáithí, back off, man. You're not the one who's living with them. And I go, yeah, but you are, and you're their parent, and you're the adult.
Yes,
and
but what do you do when the parent is of that generation that grew up with it anyway?
You come back to the point we made, Teresa, back to education, IQ, EQ, literacy. And now, as I say, we look at what are we, your question, are we educating and preparing children for the future of now, which is today? Today is the tomorrow you thought about yesterday.
Right.
There is no future. Garrett Brooks had it right when he said, the sense of that there's no future, for tomorrow never comes. Why? Because tomorrow, which is now today, because yesterday, tomorrow is today. The future is now. So when the parents are coming through that, again, how many times have any of you out there seen babies in prams, in shopping centres, with a phone or with a tablet in front of them and when these children begin to speak first, they begin to speak in accents that are a bit funny from certain parts of the world, because this is the language they're listening to. How many people sit their children on their knees and read to them instead of letting it be just in technology, which is how they hear? We have the power. That
all enters into the territory of attachment theory as well. Wow. I mean, when you have got our young attaching to the screen, as opposed to attaching to a parent's face initially, we're in trouble. And that's what has been happening for a number of years. So I think bring it on, educate the parents, educate the children from the get-go. And then we hold some semblance of normality, and we hold our power in using technology as the tool, not the master. But we run the risk of it becoming the master unless we collectively pause and design our way forward. But really, if you were to analyze everything, it's all about money. It's all about big money, big tech, big pharma, big money. And really, if you look at the value of the human in the workplace, what multinational looks at an employee and sees the full person?
I would hope that a lot of them out there do. I would hope that a lot of them out there do. And I think that during COVID, I would argue now with you, Teresa, Mary and Campbell, that during COVID, when I say that, you know, it's a principle.
COVID brought some of them to their senses.
Thank you very much. It brought a lot of them to an empathic connection to say that we now need to connect with, to support, and to enable our employees, our team, to be able to do this. So I would have to say that that's one of the things which really I was so pleased to see that so many did. Now, I know there are people out there who've lost their jobs because of this and are saying, excuse me, Dáithí, and I empathize with you. But in the massive larger corporations also, I have seen a change of mindset to try and support their teams during a time like this, and for that they need to be complimented. But you might say to me that's because they wanted to keep them on and keep making money. And once again, yin and yang. But I'd like to say at this point in time that, you know, unlike Caesar, who when Mark Antony said they were all honorable men and meant it in a sarcastic way, I actually think that an awful lot of good has been done by large corporations during COVID to support.
So the pivot to working from home, I think brought us to a space of achieving work-life integration, if you are of that mindset. But it actually brought through the screen, brought the workplace into your home to see you as the human, the father, the mother, the brother, the sister, the whatever.
It did, but it also created environments that many families had never experienced in their lives, which is the environment where they had to stop, where parents weren't working from home, they were parenting from home. And people often give out to teachers, but most people don't get it. Huge amount of the vast majority of teachers were working their tails off providing home education, and people didn't get that. They don't get it. The fact that while frontline workers were out there were teachers also there preparing massive lessons every day to connect with the children, to give them that connection. But families, some of them for the first time ever, Teresa, had to look across a table in the morning and go, who are you? Instead of coming in at 6:30 at night for half an hour reading, putting the child to bed, their whole lives. My big fear again is that many families have realized for the first time, oh my God, is this what family life is? There's going to be an awful lot of disruptions in the familial societal lives of people globally after this, and they may not all be good.
I do think that teachers pivoted brilliantly in what they did, to get online and get delivering online. And a lot of young teachers had their own children to teach as well while they were doing it. But I fear that we will lapse back to the teacher bashing very quickly unless it's presented as it should be. I think every nation must cherish its educators and its education system and the power of education to free up and to open up horizons for the human being. But since everybody has sat in a classroom, everybody is an expert on education. What do you think?
The problem is everyone is blaming. You see, again, because people are so fatigued right now, it seems that people are just blaming everyone instead of understanding that we're coming out of this very slowly and sometimes very frustratingly. I mean, people out there, I know of my age all over the world, many of them have been vaccinated once and twice, but I'm going, it will be when it is time. And it's so frustrating when so many things can be brought up and there are people out there always stoking the fire, fake news, getting people up there. That's what they do. But we just have to understand that it's going to right itself and we will have to right ourselves. And everyone, most people are now at a very tired
stage,
deep stage. And now is not the time to actually start bringing new things into the equation. Now is the time, unlike the Titanic heading towards an iceberg, now is the time to just trust ourselves. I'm not saying trust ourselves to know it's okay to feel the way we do. It's okay to acknowledge the frustration we're feeling. It's okay to feel the anger and to grab it and say, I accept it and let it go, because we can and are in control of what we are feeling right now, and it is going to come right. And that's hard to say to people because people are going to say, that's not that easy. I know it's not easy. Never said it was easy. These are the lessons that you learn throughout life. But if we allow ourselves to become stressed and frustrated and angry, we're doing ourselves a huge disservice, because it's not going to speed up the process, but the process will speed up. The process will allow many things to happen. And we don't know what this is going to look like, except if it brings the human being as a holistic person to the front, where now we have to look at EQ and IQ and equality and equity and create new opportunities for everyone and treat human beings in the way they're meant to be treated. And we can do that. And people would say he's talking through his head. Well, yeah, why not? Someone has to dream. Even Martin Luther King was shot for dreaming. I have a dream. He had a dream and he was shot for it. John F. Kennedy and so many others were shot for having the dreams, because there's always people who don't want to hear the dream. But the fact is, we have to believe in it.
But if you think of this COVID time, you think of this time of being housebound, locked up, right? You think of the advancements that technology is undergoing in this one last year alone. Isn't it more urgent than ever that we get this program of education in digital literacy.
It is, and I had the privilege in January of being asked to lead a team in Europe for emerging technologies diploma, which is going to be free to every citizen in Europe, to help them to take little snippets of 10-15 minutes on their way to from work or out walking, where they can actually just engage with, in an educational literate way, providing them with a bit of information which hopefully they can turn into knowledge about emerging technologies in Europe. I'm very, very privileged to lead that team in putting together the courses on this whole area, which is cybersecurity, the idea of self-protection, the idea of courses and all robotics and all these things. And it is, but I would then say to everyone though, and they're going to laugh at me, there's nothing wrong with going out in the garden, if you have a garden, or going out and finding a tree and hugging a tree, because hugging a tree is also a very good thing for you because it connects you. And think of the old Irish story, Larry with the ass's ears. I mean, the fact that the harp that sung the truth because the story was told to the tree. Because in Irish folklore and history, we know that our own writing came from the trees and nature and the different things. And nature was a very important way of connecting into holistic connection with life. And with all civilizations use nature as a sense of awe and inspiration and sometimes fear and other things. But the fact is that technology is a part of where we're at, but the world is still there for us to connect with it. Sure. It's not about making a choice, one or the other. Yeah. Everyone has the right to have everything if they wish to have it.
So are we leaving our young with opportunity or challenge, would you say?
Every opportunity is a challenge. Every challenge is an opportunity. I hope we're leaving them with both right now, and I hope we're presenting them with both. The thing is, I hope we're presenting them with both in an open mind that is not human agendaed, that is not AI'd, that is not algorithmed, that is not there to catch them out. Every opportunity presents its challenge. Yeah. And if we discuss it and we're willing to do it, then that challenge can become an opportunity. And that's what entrepreneurism, transformative business is all about. It's about looking at that challenge to that opportunity and turning it in. I hope that we're doing that, but to do that properly, I will go back and I'll say again, I believe that the final assessments that we use for children, even as early as 2nd class, 4th class, which is the idea of 8 or 10 or 12, and we do later on in junior certificate, maybe 14, leaving certificate 18, these are qualitative ways of getting a quantitative, a number by which people then are nearly marked like a tattoo. We have to find other ways to ensure inclusion for differently abled, not physically alone, physical, psychological, by any other word, spiritual and beyond people, the metaphysicists, those who exist in different planes. We need to be able to show that being differently abled is a good thing, because then we get different perspectives. So challenge and opportunity are good things as long as they include everyone to have a right to have their say.
Something strikes me. You talk about innovation and creativity. While some would argue that technology brings in an element of innovation or possibility that is beyond anything we could ever imagine, is there in some sense the notion of robbing the child of that organic innovation within? In using technology?
Absolutely not, because I'm going to actually attack you now if it's okay, because I love your debates.
Come on.
Technology can't imagine.
It's the human behind it, yeah.
The human is the imagination that created the technology to be able to present. The human EQ, IQ is the capacity to have the problem solving. Yes, the computer can do things faster, quicker, one thing at a time, algorithm, but it can't problem solve a million things at the one time that our brain, the greatest computer of ever, is here. And the imagination, actually, so when reality ends, imagination begins. And I said to someone once, who said this? And they're all giving me answers. Well, actually, that was said by Tinkerbell in Peter Pan. When reality ends, imagination begins. Imagination is the human being. So no, the human being can never, ever, ever, ever imagine anything which is not possible. Go back to our Star Trek, go back to the idea of all the early films. Remember when Flash Gordon, Teresa, come on, Flash Gordon goes to the moon. The first time that Ireland brought out television, 1961, everyone went, wow, Flash Gordon goes to the moon. It was in black and white, it was all done in a little bit of cartoon. Then 1969, one small step, and there are people still out there, by the way, who think that that's a conspiracy theory. But imagination is the human domain, and we can imagine anything and reimagine it, learn, unlearn, relearn. The future of now is now. That imagination is something that in Industry 5 will create multi-millions of jobs more than we will lose because of the technology that's there, because we are the ones that can imagine. The computers and the technology do not at this point in history, notice that word I said, because I'm basically not going to make a quote in 40 years time saying that Egypt said something like we only need 50 computers forever. The human capacity at this moment to imagine is beyond any technology that exists out there, except the human technology of the greatest computer ever between your two ears, your brain.
And we need to appreciate that. And we need to let's say, take heart with that statement. Now, in failing to adequately prepare for our future in a globalized world, have we Irish left our young with insurmountable challenges to overcome on every level? Is there too much ground to be made up?
Absolutely not, no. And again, in failing to, I mean, I don't know, are we failing? In many ways, you could say we are failing to do many things. But again, opportunity and the idea of challenge. I believe myself right now that there is never a point from which one cannot pull back or from which one cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So, but it all boils down to a simple point. If we are willing to abdicate our beautiful, incredible, vraiment incroyable capacity as human beings in everything that brings with it, then we have failed ourselves.
Sure.
But if we are willing to be what we are and have become and are capable of becoming and imagining, then there is no such thing, because we will learn the lessons. Remember, failure is the inability to learn the lesson. We will learn the lessons, and we know that humankind is going to mess it up again and again and again, but we don't have a planet B. We need to get that one right or we're out of here. And as I said, maybe I'm lucky I'm going into the winter of my life. I'm out of here. But the fact is, we can't say, oh, we messed up, we're going to leave it to the next generation. Duh. The next generation actually in reality right now is no longer 20 years. It's probably about 3 or 4 years with the way technology has done it. So I don't believe we're failing them, but I do believe that we are not enabling and empowering them to be literate enough in what is necessary to understand who they are as human beings, separate from this technology.
Sure. And that whole thing of ethical use of AI and all of that it underlies all of this, doesn't it? But you are rightly positioned to keep shouting.
I don't know. I'm retired. I'm supposed to be retired and out there retired, but
no, you reinvent. Retirement kills.
It does. It does. But I would love to say this. It is a privilege and an honor to still be here with the health that I now possess, for which I thank Mother Earth and Father Sky and all of the greater energies of the greater God. And as our Muslim colleagues would say, Inshallah, God be praised, to know that as long as I can breathe and speak, I will say this. We need to be incited, CITED, to look and discuss and debate everything so that we can be insightful, GHT, if you will, so that we can make the decisions that put the humanity of humankind first, and that we take care of ourselves, we love one another, we respect our EQ, equality and equity. And if I can continue to do that, then there's no harm in having action with vision, because all revolutions were started by one person. When Trotsky sat in the middle of cafes in Vienna, before there was the revolution in Russia, people used to look over and read a book and kind of go, well, if there's going to be a Russian revolution, he's going to have nothing to do with it. Little do you realize somehow or other that...
Better watch you. We better keep an eye on you.
Sometimes the child you look at in the classroom that may seem to be differently abled could end up being that one beautiful human being that changes the world in such a fantastic way.
Sure.
Respect for everyone, unconditional love for everyone, and knowing that we are not failing them unless we set out to fail them. And right now, I agree with you on that. Yeah. We have, and we are at a crossroads. We have not reached the tipping point of Moore's law yet in technology. We have not reached that zenith. We are not even at the penultimate state, never mind the ultimate. And we can adapt, change and transform by learning, unlearning and relearning. And that choice comes down to us. And if there are parents listening to us right now, which there may be, who've got children who are driving them crazy at night, I would say this: 2 weeks of them screaming and ranting when you turn off the Wi-Fi at 10:30 or 9:30 at night or whenever will lead to them being educated about who they are as human beings, because that's not their mommy, daddy, their no matter LGBTQIA+, this is not who they are.
Yes.
This is who they are.
That's the main kernel of everything we've spoken about.
So let's finish with Shakespeare. Always to yourself be true, and it shall pass neither night nor day. Thou canst not be false to any person, which is most importantly yourself.